Most people think perfectionism makes you stronger. It doesn't. It makes you disappear. You become a shapeshifter, a mirror, a silent calculator of what's expected and how much of yourself must be erased to meet it. And no one notices because you do everything right. You work harder, you try longer, you stay quieter, you hold your breath through every success, hoping this time it will feel like safety. But it never does. Instead, a voice whispers, "You should have done more. You should have done it faster, you're already behind." And the voice doesn't leave, it grows. Louder with every win, sharper with every compliment. Because now you have something to lose, an image, a reputation, a mask that must be polished every morning before you're allowed to show your face. You don't call it a war, you call it standards, ambition, excellence. But it's not, it's fear in a tailored suit. Fear with a daily planner, fear that wears your voice and sleeps in your chest. And what you're afraid of isn't failure, it's exposure. The moment someone sees past the resume, past the smile, past the armor, to the terrified truth beneath it all, that you don't believe you're enough. So you work, you prove, you polish. You run faster on a treadmill that was never meant to stop. But perfectionism doesn't end in peace, it ends in erasure. The erasure of joy, of spontaneity, of softness, of being messy and real and human. And that's where the war lives, not between good and bad, not between success and failure. Between the self you perform and the self you abandon to survive. This is not just emotional, it's neurological. Every time you criticize yourself, your body floods with cortisol. The same hormone that fires when you're chased by danger. Your brain doesn't know it's you doing the chasing. And the scariest part? You got good at it. So good they started calling it potential. So good they applauded your disappearance. So good you started to believe the pain was proof that you were doing it right. But what if pain isn't proof? What if the suffering isn't necessary? What if the war isn't noble, it's inherited? Not your fault, not your burden to carry anymore. You didn't ask for this fight, you were drafted. By expectations, by trauma, by silence that was louder than any scream. And now? You have a choice. You can keep feeding the critic, dressing it up as excellence. Or you can ask the one question that stops it cold. What if I'm not here to be perfect? What if I'm here to be whole? You weren't born hating yourself, you learned it. You learned it in glances and tones, in rewards that only came when you did everything just right. You learned that certain emotions made people uncomfortable, that certain dreams were too much. That quiet obedience got you love, or at least the illusion of it. So you became a master of disappearing, not all at once, in pieces. You silenced your joy when it was inconvenient. You buried your anger when it scared them. You clipped your curiosity when it made them nervous. And somewhere along the way, you mistook survival for identity. That's when the voice began. The one that sounds like you, but isn't. The one that says, you don't deserve to rest, you haven't earned pride. You need to prove yourself again. It doesn't scream, it advises, it sounds responsible, reasonable, adult, but it's not reason. It's a wound rehearsing its lines. It's a frightened child still trying to be good enough for people who couldn't love without conditions. You didn't create this voice, you inherited it. From a parent who couldn't love softly. From a teacher who praised compliance, not courage. From a culture that confuses perfection with value. And now that voice wears your face. It critiques you in the mirror. It narrates your failures before they happen. It steals your breath every time you try to slow down. And the worst part? You believed it was helping. You believed it was growth. You believed that if you just obeyed it long enough, if you hustled, improved, overachieved, you'd finally feel whole. But you don't feel whole, you feel hollow. Because you've been punishing the parts of you that need love the most. And you've called it discipline. That's not healing, that's self-abandonment. Carl Jung called it the persona, the version of you built to survive the gaze of the world. But it's not who you are. Because underneath that mask is the shadow, the real you, the messy you, the tender, unguarded, glorious human you. And the shadow doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be seen. But you've been too busy chasing perfection to look in its direction. Too loyal to the critic to listen to the whisper beneath it. The whisper that says, I'm still here. I never left, I'm waiting. You don't silence the inner critic by shouting back. You silence it by turning away from its courtroom. You stop arguing with lies. You walk out of the trial. You find yourself in the woods beyond judgment. And in that silence you remember, you were never meant to audition for your own life. You were never meant to prove what you already are. You are not your mask. You are not the voice that wears your face. You're the one who sees it and chooses not to believe it anymore. And that is where freedom begins. There's a kind of exhaustion no one talks about. Not the kind sleep fixes, the kind that comes from never arriving. You meet the goal and the goal moves. You win the day, and the day resets. You run, and the treadmill speeds up. But you don't stop because you know what happens if you do. The voice catches up. You're behind. Someone else is doing more. You should be further along by now. So you push harder, you achieve more. You produce, polish, perfect, but what you're chasing isn't growth. It's relief. You're not running toward a vision. You're running away from shame, and shame is a brutal coach. It doesn't rest, it doesn't praise. It just raises the bar until your joy suffocates beneath it. And the worst part? They cheer you on. They call it hustle, grit, excellence. They don't see the panic behind your composure. They don't see the cost, the tight jaw, the shallow breath. The silent tally of everything you haven't done yet. They don't know that your nervous system can't tell the difference between a missed deadline and a tiger. They don't know that your success was built on a threat response. Every win, a distraction from the fear of not being enough. You've turned your life into a transaction. One achievement in exchange for a few minutes of peace. And when the peace fades, you run again. Because the moment you sit still, the voice returns. You're wasting time. You haven't earned rest. You should be doing more, and so you do. You manage every detail. You optimize every second. You curate a life that looks like success and feels like survival. You forget what it's like to breathe. You forget what it's like to laugh without guilt. You forget who you were before you started chasing yourself in circles. This isn't productivity, it's self-erasure. You become a worker bee in your own life, laboring in service of an ideal self who never arrives. And the emptier you feel, the more you convince yourself that feeling empty is just part of becoming great. But it isn't, it's the warning bell. And eventually your body starts speaking the truth your mind keeps running from. It trembles, it forgets, it tightens. It panics in grocery stores and meetings and hallways for no reason other than it's done pretending you're okay. And one day, you ask the question that shatters the treadmill. What if rest isn't weakness? What if I don't have to prove myself by bleeding for people who don't even know I'm hurting? What if the critic in my head isn't a mentor, but a warden? What if the bars are made of gold stars? And if this feels like you, this running, this gasping, this quiet unraveling, say it out loud or below. Say it so you can hear it. Say it so we know we're not alone. Say, I'm tired and I don't want to run anymore. Collapse doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it's quiet. Civilized, invisible, it looks like rereading the same paragraph 5 times. It looks like smiling while your chest burns. It looks like sitting in your car for 10 minutes before walking into the house. This is how the war ends, not with noise, but with silence. You reach a point where your coping strategies stop working. You've optimized, meditated, pushed through. You've upgraded your routine and hacked your biology. And still something breaks, not you, the illusion. The illusion that you can outwork your shame. That if you just do enough, become enough, look enough, you'll finally feel safe in your own skin. But you don't, because the critic doesn't want completion. It wants control, and when it finally runs out of ways to push you, it goes quiet. And that quiet? That's where the real reckoning begins. You sit on the floor, not in defeat, in surrender. You stop trying to be the best version of yourself. You stop trying to be impressive. You stop trying to deserve things that were never meant to be earned in the first place. Love, rest, belonging. And in that stillness, something flickers. Not a breakthrough, a memory, a story. The Sufi fool Nasruddin searching for his key beneath a street lamp. Did you lose it here? They ask. No, he replies. I lost it inside, but the light is better out here. That's what you've been doing. Searching for your enoughness where it's bright. Where it's visible, applauded, measurable. But the key? You lost it somewhere deeper. Somewhere darker, and now for the first time you're willing to go inside, not because it's comfortable, because you're done living outside yourself. You're done performing for applause that doesn't reach your heart. You're done searching for home in someone else's approval. Because nothing out there was ever going to quiet the war in here. The critic was never the source of your worth. It was the echo of everything you thought you had to be in order to survive. But it was just noise, and now that you've stopped feeding it, you can hear something else. A whisper, a flicker. A voice that doesn't demand or dissect or destroy. It says, you're here, you're enough, you made it home. And if you've ever searched under the wrong light, tell me. Tell me what you were hoping to find. Tell me what you lost and where you're finally willing to look. Say it, out loud or below. This is the moment the war softens. This is the moment the mirror doesn't lie. This is the moment you stop disappearing. There's a silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels sacred. It arrives when the critic has nothing left to say, when your exhaustion becomes louder than your ambition, when you finally stop measuring your worth by what you produce and start asking, who's been speaking to me all this time? And that's when you hear it, not a command, not a correction, a whisper. Soft, patient, familiar. You've heard it before, beneath the noise, beneath the pressure, beneath the mask. You just didn't believe it, because it didn't sound like urgency. It didn't make you hustle. It didn't threaten you with failure. It just said, you don't have to try so hard, you're still here, you were always enough. At first you doubt it, the voice is too kind, too quiet, too different from the one that raised you. But this isn't the voice of laziness, it's the voice of the self that never left. The one that waited while you built temples to perfection. The one that didn't need you to shine, only to show up. And now, in the stillness where your old motivations have collapsed, it becomes audible again. It doesn't promise greatness, it offers something rarer. Presence. It invites you into a life where you're no longer trying to earn rest, no longer apologizing for your softness, no longer competing with the impossible. This is the voice of wholeness, the voice that doesn't divide you into not yet and almost there. It sees the cracks and calls them beautiful. It knows the shame and meets it with mercy. It remembers the child you were, the one who just wanted to be held, not fixed. And in that remembering, something shifts. You realize the inner critic wasn't evil, it was scared. It thought it was keeping you safe by making you small, obedient, perfect. But it was never meant to be in charge. It was a frightened guardian doing its best with broken instructions. Now you have a new compass, not the voice of fear. The voice of return. You don't need to be flawless to listen to it. You don't need to be healed. You only need to be still enough to hear the truth that's been echoing beneath every accomplishment, that your worth was never up for debate. that your existence has never required explanation, that the battle was never between failure and perfection. It was between forgetting and remembering. And now that you remember, the healing isn't a task. It's a homecoming. If you've ever heard that whisper and buried it, say so. Let the rest of us know what it said. We're listening. We're waiting. Say it out loud or say it below. Because sometimes someone else needs your whisper to find their own. This isn't a triumph story. It's not a redemption arc. Not a comeback. Not the part where you conquer your inner demons and ride off glowing into the next chapter. It's something quieter. You wake up. You don't reach for the mask. You don't plan your apology before you've even made a mistake. You just breathe, and that one breath, unearned, unoptimized, unmeasured, feels revolutionary. Because for the first time, you're not starting the day at war. Not with your reflection, not with your effort, not with the impossible self you thought you had to become. You lay down the sword. And in that surrender, you don't vanish, you return. This is what Carl Jung meant when he said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not because it's painful, because it's unfamiliar. You've lived so long through the eyes of the critic, you forgot what it's like to simply be without commentary, to walk without evaluation, to smile without strategy, to stand in your own skin and not flinch. This is the peace you never thought you'd earn because you were taught that peace is a prize for perfection. But peace is not a prize, it's a permission. And you don't need anyone else to grant it. You can offer it to yourself right here, right now. You're not your checklist. You are not your productivity. You are not the person you pretended to be just to feel safe. You are the one who survived that performance. You are the one who came home without applause, without proof, just presence, and that is enough. The war inside doesn't end because you win. It ends because you stop believing there's something wrong with being human. It ends when you see your scars and choose not to hide them. It ends when you understand that the voice who told you you'd never be enough was never yours. If this video reminded you of that voice, share it. Let it go in front of all of us. Call it by name. Say what it used to say, and then say what you say now out loud or below, because this story isn't finished. It lives in every one of us who's ever felt not enough. But here now, maybe we remember, you are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole, and you already are.